he doesn't need to be PJ Tucker and the two-piece silk. He doesn't need to be Russell Westbrook with, the cleavage. It just works for him.
Welcome to the MKF NBA show. I'm Nick Whalen. You know me as the NBA editor over at Rotowire.com. Been your host for MKF NBA contests all season long. Been doing some NFL work as well. Really enjoyed working with MKF. Each week of the NBA season, I'll be joined by essentially just a parade of Raptors fans that our producer, Jason Rubin, has recruited. But today it is Queen of the Universe, I'm told, is the official title. That's what we're going with. Secondarily, a insider for Raptors Republic, basketball news. Kelsey, you can find her on Twitter at Kelsey Lately. Kelsey, we met for the first time like 10 minutes ago. Looking forward to talking hoops with you.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we got a packed Wednesday slate as always. We got to talk some Knicks. We got to talk some Raptors. Just before we went live, we got cats on camera, so I don't know what's going to be coming at us over the next half hour. But I want to do a brief look back on Tuesday night. We had the typical smaller Tuesday night slate. Usually we get somewhere between like 3 and 5 games. We had 5 last night. As you astutely pointed out, Kelsey, Ben Simmons is yet to ever lose to the New York Knicks.
No, he's made that special stat line where his team is lost, but he's still undefeated against the Knicks.
He's the missing piece. Yeah, it was a blowout win for New York. This game was almost a 30-point blowout at times. Philadelphia able to make it look a little more respectable, 112-99. But Joel Embiid really did not look right at all during this game. He had a sore knee coming in. His worst game of the season thus far. Obviously a little bit concerning if you're a Sixers supporter or a Joel Embiid rosterer in fantasy basketball, that we are 4 games into the year and, without their second best player for who knows how long in Simmons, Joel Embiid is already banged up. So, whether this concerns future MKF contests or, just the way that you follow the Sixers or judge them, like how concerned are you, Kelsey, that Joel Embiid, the number one guy you don't want to be banged up, is already, on the injury report every single night, a week and a half into the season?
Very concerned. I'm very concerned if I'm a Sixers fan. And like you said, if I have Joel Embiid trying to take my championship or my fantasy team to the promised land, because you don't have Ben, you don't have Joel, you gave away Jimmy. We're going to rely on Tobias Harris and Danny Green. And I don't know how well that's going to work out for you, but I wish you all the best.
Yeah, it's the relying on Danny Green part. I think that's the toughest one for me to buy in on. Danny Green on any given night, it vacillates between the greatest shooter of all time and like the worst player in the NBA history. There's no in between. He has to be one or the other. And if he's not the greatest player in NBA history, then you're going to be in for a long night, especially like last night where Steph Curry, I think, was 0-4, 0-5 from 3. He struggled. Elsewhere last night, we saw Golden State have a come from behind win at OKC. I threw out Golden State -9 as my best bet, absolute mortal lock on Rotowire yesterday. Of course, they win that game by 8 points. They passed up a wide open layup that would have sealed that cover. Thank you to Damian Lee for just dribbling out the clock instead of laying that up. That was very cool. We saw Dallas take down Houston. We saw the Lakers take down San Antonio in overtime. I don't know if you guys watched this game. This was I think it was on NBA TV. I thought Anthony Davis died on the floor late in this game. He goes down. He's like writhing in pain. Play is still happening. Keita Bates-Diop ends up with a wide open game tying layup because Davis is on the ground. Hilariously, like the bench is like telling Davis like get up. Nobody's like, oh my God, he might be hurt. They're like, get the hell up. What are you doing? I'm thinking like this guy just blew out his knee. He's grabbing at it. He's like crying. 2 seconds later, he's up. He stays in the game. The Lakers have like 5 seconds to try to get one more basket before overtime. What's the play? Throw up a half-court lob to the guy who was just rolling around on the ground with a knee injury. But it turns out Anthony Davis, as usual, despite looking like he just got shot, totally fine, looked good in overtime. Lakers get the win. And that rolls us into our Wednesday slate because the Lakers are back in action. They're at OKC, a pretty friendly back-to-back. As far as teams you want to be playing on a back-to-back set, I think OKC right now is right at the top of the list. They are by far the league's worst team net rating. They're bottom 5 in both offense and defense. That's a team that I will certainly be targeting. But I want to look at one of the individual game contests on MKF. Kelsey. We'll go to Heat at Nets right away. I think this is probably the marquee game on this slate, although some would maybe argue Pacers, Raptors, battle of 1 and 3 teams is up there as well. But Kevin Durant's over-under for points tonight, 28.5. How do you feel about that one, Kelsey?
Over. Okay. Definitely over. I feel like there's some sort of Kyle Lowry and Kevin Durant are both very competitive people, and when they are against each other, they are extra competitive. So I feel like we don't know their personal relationship, obviously, but I feel like that kind of adds a fire under Kevin Durant to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Is there? You would know better than me, given that you followed the Raptors as closely as anybody. Like, is there like legitimate beef between Durant and Lowry? Like, have they had back and forth?
Oh no, not at all. I don't think there is at all. I just think that, Lowry won his championship the year that KD got hurt against him. So I think that there's
right.
And they're both on new teams now. So it's kind of like a new fresh start of the battle of the Ks.
That's a great way to look at it. So far we see KD go for 32, 29, 38, and then 25 against Washington the other night. So chances are, based on those numbers so far, I think the more is probably the way to go there. James Harden's also struggled so far. James Harden has not scored more than 20 points in any of these first 4 games for Brooklyn. And the rebounds have been there. The assists have been there. The turnovers have also been there, which is kind of par for the course for James Harden. But I think what's more concerning is he's just not getting to the line nearly at the rate that he was before, which, I mean, this guy has 12 free throw attempts total through 4 games. He had a season, I think 2 or 3 years ago, where he averaged 12 free throw attempts per game. I don't know how much bets you've been able to watch, Kelsey, but are you a little concerned by, the downturn in free throws? I don't know if it's the, kind of the new refereeing rules around James Harden, but do you see him, eventually picking it up as the season goes on?
I see him picking it up, and not because he's going to find a new way to score, but because I feel like the refs are going to try and probably abandon this call halfway through the season.
I don't know where I feel about it, because I think we've maybe now gone to another extreme where it's like every game you watch, there's like 5 times where a player is flailing in the air thinking they're going to get that call, and it just results in like a comical air ball, which I guess is better than like a really cheap foul. But yeah, there has to be some sort of happy medium. I think maybe some relaxation by the refs, maybe some adjustments by players. I think, the main goal essentially, right, is players getting out of the habit of even trying that move.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, James Harden is a great scorer. He's just got to kind of get out of the mindset that was one of the only scoring options, because he can score from elsewhere. Right. He chooses not to.
Yeah, tough mode to get out of when that's kind of how you've been operating for the last 7 or 8 years. Jimmy Butler, 20.5 is the point line for Jimmy Butler tonight. He's coming off of easily his best game of the season, one of his best games really in a Miami Heat uniform. He went for 36, 3, 2, 5 steals, 15 of 21 from the field against Orlando on Monday night, 6 of 6 at the line. A complete effort for Jimmy Butler. However, first game of the year, 21 points. Next game, 19 points. So kind of coming in right around this 20.5 number. Do you think he follows it up with another over here?
This is the tough one, because it's going to be the battle of the 2 expected Eastern Conference Finals teams. So are they going to empty it all out tonight, this early in the season? Or are they going to hold off? I'm going to say under.
Under?
Yes.
Okay. You think OG and Scotty Barnes lock him up?
Lock up Jimmy Butler?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. No, I'm so confused. When you said Eastern Conference Finals, I automatically assumed we were talking about the Raptors.
Well,
I was looking at the complete wrong line on our sheet. I said you think KD and Bruce Brown, are going to lock him up?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Jimmy Butler, not necessarily a guy who strings together, huge scoring games. So I think I'll join you on the less there. We're going to switch over to a tough topic now. You have to talk about Kyle Lowry, who is no longer in a Toronto Raptors uniform. His line, we're not going points for Kyle Lowry. We're going assists. He's at 6.5 assists tonight on MKF. He's played 2 games so far. Of course, missed 1 game due to injury over the weekend against Indiana. But in those 2 games, he had 6 assists against Milwaukee in the opener. That was a game that was over by the end of the first quarter. Lowry only played 24 minutes in that game. And then against Orlando the other night, 8 assists in 31 minutes. So you're kind of going right between those games. 6.5 is the number for Lowry.
Over. Lowry's going to have at least a double-double with assists. Yes, over.
Where would the number have
Yeah.
to be for you to not say over? Like 20 and a half, 25 and a half?
Maybe. Even then, I'd be hesitant.
All right. I felt like that was an automatic over or more from the start. Let's switch over now to Pacers Raptors. I will essentially cede the floor for you to talk about Fred VanVleet, whose number is, I think, maybe a little bit higher than I would have expected based on what we've seen from him so far. Fantasy wise, I had really high expectations for Fred VanVleet this season. We went pretty aggressive on his projection at Rotowire with Kyle Lowry being out of the picture, with Pascal Siakam sidelined to begin the year. But Fred VanVleet, only one 20-point game so far through 4 appearances, and he got to exactly 20 points in that game. So he really hasn't had any of those explosive performances yet. He has no more than 2 made threes in any of his 4 games so far. A bit of a slow start. So, 18 and a half, how does that number feel to you, and where do you go more or less there?
I might take the under on that one just because he hasn't really, he spent his whole season playing alongside Kyle Lowry, where Kyle was more of the facilitator, getting Fred the ball. This time, Fred's kind of been given that role because Gary Trent Jr., who he's playing mostly beside this year, is a score first player. So it's kind of been difficult for him to figure out his role with the team, despite being, the leader, the veteran. I think I'm going to go under because his 20-point game against the Bulls, or his big game against the Bulls, was kind of he was leaving it all on the court that night. There was no way he was going to let him get blown out by the Chicago Bulls. So I think that was kind of a one-off. So I'm going to go with the under on this one.
I mean, based on how he's played so far, I think that's a safe play. Toronto just hasn't really been a very friendly fantasy team or team to target for MKF contests. I mean, they're bottom 5 in offensive rating so far. They're playing at the second slowest pace. So there haven't really been a lot of points piled up thus far. Struggling to adjust, I think, without Kyle Lowry and without Siakam. However, it sounds like Siakam's ahead of schedule, went through a full practice on Tuesday. I wouldn't be surprised if he's back in the mix, within the next week or two, as opposed to mid to late November, which it looked like at the beginning of that timetable. Let's go to the other side of this one. Domantas Sabonis has been a monster so far. His total's at 19 and a half. I believe he went over this total in the first half of the opener against Charlotte last week when he went for 33 and 15, went for 28 against Washington in their next game, 17 and 12 against Miami on Saturday. And then another double-double, 21, 13, and 5 against Milwaukee in that loss on Monday. I think this is a pretty good spot for Sabonis. I think that VanVleet line is maybe a little too high based on how he's played. I feel the opposite about the Sabonis line. I think this could be 21, 22, 23 and a half, and that would make it a little bit of a tougher decision. I'm leaning toward the more on this.
Definitely the more. And if it's less, it's only because O'Shea Brissett is going to come out swinging against his former team.
O'Shea Brissett. All right, mark that, Jason, so we make sure to cut up the O'Shea Brissett reference for social media. I honestly, O'Shea Brissett had some games at the end of last season. I know we only want to talk O'Shea Brissett for like 5 or 10 minutes. We don't want to go too long on him. But when Miles Turner was banged up at the end of last year, when Sabonis was banged up, there were times where I would go as far as to say it was the O'Shea Brissett show in Indiana. Let's go to
where does he rank on the all-time Pacers lists? Top 5?
All-time,
top
3? Just like coolest guys or what?
Coolest guys, yeah. Top 4?
I mean, the Pacers don't have that many cool guys, right? I mean, once you get past Reggie Miller, Travis Best, Austin Crocier, I mean, he's probably somewhere in that like 7 to 10 range.
You're right. They really aren't a cool team, are they?
I think they've had very underrated uniforms over the years. So I think there's a lot of cool potential with the Pacers. I think, like the first Reggie Miller era with like the big diagonal stripe, like those were really great. And then I think the pinstripe, like late 90s, early 2000s uniforms are extremely underrated. I feel like they felt like they had to just get rid of those after Malice at the Palace, as if that would like wipe it all away. But I think those are going to age very well.
Agreed.
All right, let's look at the slate.
I guess Jalen Rose became a very cool post-life Pacer, if you will.
I think he was cooler looking back now. I don't know if we realized how cool he was as a Pacer at the time.
Right.
If that makes sense. Yeah, right. And I mean, Steven Jackson, I think for obvious reasons, belongs in that conversation as well.
Agreed. Good stuff. Good Pacers combo.
Yeah, we needed that. All right, let's look at the All Day Slate contest on MKF. You can go 10 for 10. You can get 500 times your money if you're really feeling that tonight. But we'll run through a few of these. We won't go through all 10, but I mean, these all involve prominent star players. Unfortunately, I don't know if they offer any exclusive O'Shea Brissett, like over under 5.5 minutes played contest. That could be something to consider. But we'll start with Damian Lillard. His number is at 27.5. Portland is home for the Memphis Grizzlies tonight. The Grizzlies, number one defense to target so far. They've been a really fun team. They've banked some wins. They of course kind of blew that game I thought the other night against the Lakers. But they've been playing really quickly. They haven't been playing a ton of defense. I think this is a pretty friendly spot for Damian Lillard. However, I think he has quietly been off to probably easily the worst start of his career. One 20-point game through 3 games. He has a 20-point game, a 19-point game, and then a really ugly 12-point game in that blowout loss to the Clippers on Monday. 0 of 8 from 3 in that game. Hasn't really been getting to the line, at his normal rate. CJ McCollum has looked actually like the much better player in that backcourt so far. Is this the night, Kelsey, that Lillard gets back on track?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be Damian Lillard trying to hang with John Morant, trying to put up those same numbers, and I just don't think that it's going to work. So I'm going to say under.
Okay, I'm going to go the opposite on that one. I think this is the night. I think Lillard can't keep this up. I don't know what is to account for this slow start, but I think he gets back on track. He's been as consistent as anybody, really for the last decade. So I do trust Lillard to kind of get right in what's a pretty appealing matchup. John Morant has been awesome so far. No other way to put it. 37, 28, and then 40 points in his first 3 games so far, going well above this number on average of 26.5 on MKF tonight. He's been the complete opposite of Lillard, where, I think Lillard could kind of break out of the slump. And I think Morant, probably not going to go the entire season averaging like 35 points per game. At some point, that's going to come down a little bit. Do you think that starts tonight, or do you think he keeps it rolling against Portland?
Keeps it rolling.
All right, I like it.
I have too much faith in John Morant.
Maybe a little too much. I would like for him to average 35 a game for the year. I think that would be a lot of fun. One thing, I'll run this by you. We were discussing this on a quick shameless plug for the Rotowire NBA podcast. We were talking about this on Monday. At this point, how much of a debate is it? Who would you rather have for, let's say, the next 5 years, John Morant or Zion Williamson? Because I feel like the pendulum has swung back and forth on this debate a number of times, mostly based on Zion Williamson's injuries. But as of right now, it feels like John Morant's stock is at an all-time high and Zion's stock is at an all-time low.
Get Zion out of New Orleans and then we'll talk.
Well, that's the thing. It's like how much of his struggles with weight and staying in shape and, kind of not disclosing pretty major injuries to the organization. Like how much of that is, all leveraging toward, I just don't want to be here, versus like if he was in a situation where he, seemingly liked and trusted management, would things go smoother? I think there's a case to be made for that. So are you saying like in a better situation, you'd still rather have Zion?
I don't know if I would rather have him. That's a tough one because situationally now I would rather have Ja. But if Zion were to find the right system, then we haven't seen it. So we don't really know.
I feel like the upside is still there for Zion. It's like all he needs to do is come back from this foot injury, put up like 39 and 15 in this first game, and then I will be like, oh, nope, I'm back on Zion. But I do feel like Morant is by far the safer option at this point. And like upside wise, Zion still has more. But to me, it's close enough that the massive injury risk for one guy versus like very little injury risk for John Morant, like that outweighs what might tilt the long-term potential in favor of Zion. But it's going to be a really interesting debate, I think. And once Zion's back, it probably heats up even more. Trae Young, his number tonight, 25.5 points. We've seen Trae Young go for 19, 24, and then most recently 32 in a win over Detroit over the weekend. Not hitting a ton of threes. I think that was kind of an underrated storyline around Trae Young last year, where you still kind of think of him as this like Steph Curry player who's pulling up 12 times a game and hitting 5 or 6 threes. Like he dramatically decreased his 3-point volume last season, and it resulted in better play for the Hawks, more efficient numbers for Trae Young. Thus far, he has just 5 made threes through 3 games. I think this is a really good number, 25.5, makes it a pretty difficult pick. Where do you come in on Trae Young?
I'm going to go over on Trae Young.
Okay, is that a product of the Pelicans defense?
Yes, entirely.
I'm not going to fight you on that. I mean, I think the Pelicans are right up there with Memphis as a team to target. They've been a little more fun than I expected without Zion, but about as bad defensively as you'd expect. And I think this season could very quickly go off the rails for them, especially if Zion ends up missing a few more weeks. How about Bradley Beal? 26.5 points is the number for Bradley Beal tonight. I haven't looked at the updated usage rate stats as of this morning, but I know as of yesterday, Brad Beal was leading the league in usage rate. Unsurprisingly, he was at like 35%. I think he would be on the short list of guys you think would be on that list coming into the year. He's still at 35.4%. That does lead the league. He's just ahead of John Morant, ironically enough. Where do you come in on Beal? 26.5 at Boston. So not necessarily the easiest opponent.
That's why I'm going to go with the under, because they are at Boston. It's a familiar team that is extremely familiar with Bradley Beal and his style of play. So I think that they're going to tailor their game around him specifically. And I think for that reason, we're probably safe going under.
Safe is not quite the word I would use with Brad Beal, but I think you're on the right track as far as the defenders that Boston can throw at him, right? I mean, Jason Tatum could guard Brad Beal if need be. Jaylen Brown, I would imagine, gets that assignment a lot of the night. Marcus Smart. I mean, you have like 3 bona fide guys who can guard him. Even Josh Richardson, who has kind of fallen off the map these last couple of years. Defensively, I think he profiles as a guy who can.
He hasn't fallen off the map. He's been all over the map.
I think that counts as falling off the map. I thought he was like this super role player. When he was in Miami, that was probably 4 years ago at this point. Like I thought this guy was going to be like a McCall Bridges type, and it's gone completely the other way.
I still believe.
Okay, that might be, that's one of the hottest takes I've heard, is like, I'm still in on Josh Richardson. That many people are throwing that out.
You heard it here first.
All right, let's talk a little Raptors, and then we'll finally get to Kevin Durant on fashion. We'll talk a little Harrison Barnes, who is lighting the league on fire. I have personal concerns about Chris Boucher, who I heavily invested in fantasy leagues this year. And I think it took him like 2.5 games to be publicly shamed by Nick Nurse in a press conference. This is like the 3rd time that Nick Nurse has gone out of his way to just like throw Chris Boucher under the bus. He's played like 9 combined minutes over the last couple of games. You've probably watched a lot more, start to finish Raptors than I have over the last couple of years. Why does Nick Nurse hate Chris Boucher so much? Because it seems like every time he plays 15 plus minutes, he's like 15 points, 9 rebounds, 4 blocks, 3 3-pointers. Like, is there some sort of disconnect between his on-court play and the stats?
I think so, because I think that Nick Nurse isn't all about the fancy, everybody do everything. I think he's, know your role and play it. He wants Chris Boucher to grab the rebound. He wants Chris Boucher to defend. And Chris Boucher says, no, I'm going to be the big man who hits the 3, and I'm going to do a little this and a little that. I need all of the highlights for my Instagram stories. So I think that there's, Nick Nurse is saying one thing and Chris Boucher is going on the court and saying, okay, sure. And then he'll go in and immediately attempt a 3.
I think that's a pretty fair assessment, honestly. I think that the lack of discipline seems to be the main issue with Boucher. But thank you for that. I think he'll probably be I hate to say it, might be a drop for me in fantasy leagues this week. Let's get to Durant. Thank you to Jason, our producer, for throwing this in the outline. I was hoping we'd be able to discuss this. I don't know if I can read the full quote. I'm going to say probably not. But this is a quote from Kevin Durant to teammate Bruce Brown, who was, quote, dissecting his outfit. I assume this was post-game recently. Durant said, "I'm a hooper, man. I don't do all that fashion." We'll say stuff instead of what Durant said, but you could kind of fill in the blank there. Do we expect Kevin Durant to be a fashionable guy? We were kind of discussing this off air. I don't know that there's a correct take here, but Kelsey, like, has Kevin Durant made a point that he's a fashionable guy in the past? Like, I feel like he's kind of always been in this lane. Like, this shouldn't be surprising, right?
The thing about Kevin Durant is that he's like effortlessly stylish. Like, he will wake up and throw on his little hat and whatever plaid shirt and skinny jeans he has lying on the floor, and it'll look good.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be PJ Tucker and the two-piece silk. He doesn't need to be Russell Westbrook with, the cleavage. It just works for him. So I don't not believe him when he says he doesn't know fashion. It works for him. Must be nice.
Yeah, right. I mean, SGA is always the guy that comes to mind as well. It's like he'll like post his like pregame outfit on Instagram, and it's like middle of October in LA, and he's wearing like a full snowsuit, like a lime green snowsuit, walking into the game. Like, how is this comfortable? There's like 80 zippers all over the pants. I don't know what he's zipping into his pants. I'm tough to like pickpocket somebody, I guess, when you don't know like which pocket their valuables might be in. But yeah, you don't really see Durant going all out for like a $4,500 t-shirt that has holes in it. At the same time, I think you mentioned like you're spot on with like when I think of Kevin Durant, it's like checkered shirt that looks like it could possibly be from like Abercrombie or Aeropostale, buttoned all the way up here. The classic beanie hat that I feel like he would play in if the NBA allowed it. I imagine that like when he walks to his closet in the morning, it's just like a cartoon character where it's like just the same outfit 40
like Marge
times.
Simpson, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. He just gets in there, puts on the same thing every day, walks out of the house, and that's that.
Yeah, exactly. But it works for him. I mean,
Sure
throw
does.
like a t-shirt of a band he probably doesn't listen to under, and that's his outfit for the day.
Very, very, very well stated. Yes, it's like a Ramones shirt. Like Kevin Durant, noted fan of the Ramones. Another thing I'm glad Jason threw into the outline today, something that's very near and dear to my heart. We are 3 games into the season for the Sacramento Kings. Is Harrison Barnes the leading MVP candidate right now? 28.3 points per game, 10.3 rebounds per game. He's at 56% from 3. He's hitting 5 3-pointers per game. He was the number 1 player in his high school class all the way back in like 2008 or 2009. Are we finally seeing that come to fruition more than a decade later?
I hope so, because then I hope that the same thing's going to happen to Stanley Johnson. But I didn't even know that Harrison Barnes was with the Kings still. So thank you for that.
I let alone scoring 28 points per game in 37 minutes a night. Yeah, you could like there. I think for most casual NBA fans, you could tell them Harrison Barnes was starting at small forward for like 80% of the teams in the league, and you'd be like, yeah, I could see that happening. Like I don't remember that being the case, but I could see that move flying under the radar. But no, he's still in Sacramento. He's of course leading the Kings in like every category at this point. We'll see if that sustains. If we check in like mid-January and Harrison Barnes is still hovering around 30 points per game, cruising to his first MVP, we'll see where we're at that point. But I'm gonna go. Can we get a season-long contest on this, Jason? Like Harrison Barnes, like more or less finishing the season at like 17 points per game?
I was going to say more or less than 35 first place MVP votes.
The thing is, he's playing so well. Are the Kings going to trade him at the deadline?
Yeah, is he playing too well for the Kings?
Yeah.
That might be
I don't like this.
Is anybody against the idea of the Warriors taking him back? He was part of that championship
I think the Warriors
team.
might be.
Yeah, the Warriors.
They don't need 28.3 points per game?
Go back and watch the 2016 finals and watch Harrison Barnes just like brick wide open wing 3 after wide open wing 3. I think that was almost a mutual separation where like Harrison Barnes was like, I can't show my face with this organization again. Like they were very quick.
That's
to get
why
him
they
out of there
closed Oracle.
Yeah, exactly. They just had to burn it down and start over in a brand new building.
Sorry, Harrison.
All right, let's. He went like 7 or 8 that year. Yeah, well, I'm looking it up too. Don't worry. We should also mention this. I don't know. Apologies to all you guys from me for not bringing this up earlier. His nickname is Black Falcon.
Well, that changes everything. I take back everything I've said about Harrison.
Yeah,
Barnes.
I think I'm going to go more on 35 MVP votes now that I know this.
Definitely.
Okay, so Jason, this was the fabled 2012 Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Dion Waiters, Thomas Robinson draft.
Dion Waiters, I still believe.
Oh, absolutely. No question. Dion Waiters is in his prime right now. He'll be back. RIP, right? I think. I mean, it's overall it ended up being okay. I mean, you got 2 Hall of Famers in Lillard and Davis, and then probably 3 in Draymond. Beal's going to be right there, but like there's not a ton of depth. Like it falls off pretty hard after Middleton, depending on what you think about Andre Drummond.
Which
I'm not a Plumlee guy. I would much rather talk about Kendall Marshall than any of the Plumlees. All right, Kelsey, I'm going to throw out one more pick from tonight's slate, then we'll wrap this thing up.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we don't have any Black Falcon props on the board, at least not that I'm seeing. That might be like a special area that you need like a VIP password to unlock on MKF. But Giannis Antetokounmpo, Bucks are home for the upstart Minnesota Timberwolves, who are finally looking like they're making progress after like 2 decades of kind of toiling toward the bottom of the Western Conference. But they kind of remind me of like the Western Conference version of the Charlotte Hornets so far, where like you don't really want to believe, like a lot of the pieces haven't really clicked in the past, but suddenly they look like a really fun team that's playing with more confidence. At the same time, I think this is still a team that you very much want to target when you're talking daily contests like this. I don't think I trust the Minnesota defense quite yet with the personnel that they have, especially to stop a player like Giannis. Giannis, I think, has looked fantastic so far. I think the jump shot that we got a little bit of a preview of during the preseason, specifically that Jazz game that temporarily set the internet on fire. I think the jumper looks a lot better. I think you could kind of throw out that Miami game where they got blown out and his numbers weren't all that great. Other than that, he's been 30 points or more in his other 3 games. He's coming off a 36 against Indiana the other night. 29.5 is the number for Giannis. That's the highest number of any player on the board tonight. Is that a little too high for you? Just right? Where do you go on 29.5 points?
It's probably just right, so I'm going to pick the over.
I think that's usually safe with Giannis. Yeah, if you're kind of 50-50, err on the side of caution, which for some players means take the under. For a player like Giannis, I think that means take the more. I love Karl Anthony Towns. He really is going to provide a ton of resistance on a guy like Giannis. I think there's still a pretty big strength advantage for Giannis. And Minnesota doesn't really have a big body behind Towns. Like, they don't have I can't believe I'm bringing this up, but like Gorgui Dieng is like kind of a guy that you would maybe want to at least provide some like interior resistance against Giannis. Like if it's not Towns, is it Naz Reid? I don't know that he's really going to help you all that much.
This could be the We Believe show. This is the We Believe show. Bring all these guys back. Gorgui Dieng, Dion Waiters. Come on.
I think there's a chance we could get these guys on the show. Like Dion Waiters especially. Like have we even tried? I mean, I think there's like a 50-50 chance he'd be like, yeah, I have nothing going on.
Yeah, what's the over-under on that, on getting Dion Waiters on the show?
I think I would go yes, if it's a yes or no.
Definitely more possible than most other players, I would say. I don't know.
I think that's a pretty safe way to put it.
We'll send some emails.
Yeah, he doesn't strike me as an email guy. Maybe try like a text or a smoke signal potentially.
Plus a sign. Maybe?
We'll figure something out.
Maybe a sign.
Yeah, if we can get his AIM handle, I think that would probably be an ideal way to reach him.
Oh my god.
All right, I think if we're talking about ways to reach out to Dion Waiters, it's probably time to wrap up the show. This has been the MKF NBA show. For Kelsey, you can find her, of course, on Twitter at Kelsey_lately. Make sure to give her a follow. I am Nick Whalen from Rotowire. We will be back next Wednesday.